We're on part 3 of the time tutorial. So moving forward, I'm going to go ahead and go to my top view, select all, and hide H on the keyboard. Background image, let's add a new one. Add, open. I'm going to go reference image. We'll go, let me do thumbnails. I'm going to start with this one, click open. And scale her up. Something like that. I'm going to hide the original for right now. And so let's start creating these gears. Now remember at the beginning of the tutorial we activated under the preference extra mesh objects, and that gives us the ability when we hit Shift A to go mesh and go down to gears and gear. Okay, so here's the gear, very small. So let's start out with talking about radius. Now I like to make my life easy and not have to do a ton of math equations when creating gears, so that way my animations work correctly. Otherwise, if you just make random sizes with random teeth numbers, the animation's not going to look right. So I like to start with a base point. So let me pull up a notepad file. So let's say a radius on a gear will be, say, smallest of 2. Okay, that means the teeth, I'm going to set the smallest amount of teeth is going to be, let's say, 8. So from here on out, I'm going to double everything up. So a radius of 4 is going to equal 16 teeth. A radius of 8 is going to equal 32. A radius of, let's see, 8, 16 is going to be a radius of 64. And teeth of 64. Radius of 32 is going to be teeth of 128. And I can keep going and going and going. I can even go lower by going a radius of 1 and 4 teeth, but I think this would be a good start point. So I'm going to use this as my control values for all my gear sizes and the amount of teeth for each size. So I'm not going to be creating a gear and copying and scaling it all over the place. I will always create individual gears with these specific values. And that way, when I create the animation, the teeth will align together perfectly. So let's start with a radius of 8 and 32 teeth. So let's go radius 8, and let's say 32. And I'm going to increase the teeth size a bit. Maybe something like that. And I'm going to decrease the angle, let's say 15. Now that's up to you. That's more cosmetic. I mean, you can get real detailed in getting these gears to fit really nicely together by playing with the teeth length and the base point to the teeth and the angle, of course. But I think this is good just for now. And I'm going to decrease the base, or actually increase it. So that's my first gear, matches the one that's behind it. So I'm going to go ahead and move this off to the side. I'm going to reactivate my move tool. Now, selection mode, which is this, allows me to just select things. If I wanted to move it and not have to come down to the move tool, all I have to do is hit G on the keyboard. I haven't really talked about G or rotate, but R is rotate, G is move, which is called grab actually. So G is grab, R is rotate, and S is scale. Pretty self-explanatory. So if I hit G, it allows me to grab it, and I can say, let's say on the X-axis, and move it specifically along the X-axis if I wanted to. So because I'm in the top viewport, it's not going to really let me move it on the Z-axis unless I force it to. So I'm just going to pull this off to the side, G, move. Now again, if you like the little handles, you're going to want to come down here and activate the actual move tool. But I find it for right now, especially when we're going to be modeling out these sprockets, maybe having selection only is going to help us out and give us the ability to grab and select things quicker without accidentally moving little vertices or faces. So just keep that in mind. I didn't really talk about that in the past, and I should have, and I didn't, and I'm sorry. I'm bringing it up now. I guess better late than never. So anyway, so there's our first gear. Let's say something like this. So I'll do a radius of, let's go try 32, see what size that is. So I'm going to hit Shift A, mesh, and go into gear. And let's say a radius of 32. That's way too big. That's just going to be ridiculous. So my next radius below that is 16. 16, and 16 comes with 64 teeth. So 64, and let's decrease the base because it's got a fairly thin structure. So now I want to create the cylinder piece inside, and then of course the little brackets. So I'm going to go ahead and hit tab on the keyboard, goes into edit mode, rotate around here. I almost forgot, my gears are very thin. Let me think here. The reason why I'm keeping them thin is because, again, in a pocket watch, usually the gears are very thin and it gives me more space to add more things. So there's my gear. We're in edit mode. Now, if I create an object in edit mode, it's going to be part of the first object I created. So like I said, edit mode, Shift A. Let's go down to cylinder. Okay, go back to my top view. So my cylinder, I'm going to increase the radius. Let's see, maybe a little smaller, let's say 5. And I'm going to increase the segments to 64. That should be good. And that should give me an easy match from one to the next. I'm thinking that will work. Now depth, it's definitely way too thick, so I'm going to try something like 0.4. Let me go to my front viewport, and that looks like it's perfect. I'll hit Z to go through see-through mode. Yep, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to go into 7 again, my top viewport, and 64. I think everything else is good. So let's start playing with connecting these two things. Now, I want to make my life easier instead of trying to, because again, this is a 5 sprocket, so I can't just use the XYZ axis to connect points or take a look at which faces will connect to which faces. So I'm going to create a kind of a helper object, a visual helper object. So I'm going to go ahead and hit A to deselect all, Shift A to go and create a cube. Now with the cube selected, all the geometry selected, I'm going to hit G to move it and Y to move it just on the Y axis. Put it there, and now I'm going to scale it. So S on the keyboard, and I'm going to scale on the Y axis to, let's say, about there. So I'm going to move it down just a little bit in the Y-axis, and I'll scale it on the X-axis a little bit. It doesn't need to be so thick, so something like that. Okay, so there's a good helper object. Now I want to duplicate this 5 times to mimic the position of these 5 pieces. So I'm going to hit Shift D, Shift D, and I'm going to hit let's see, we want to rotate, so R on the keyboard. Rotate. Now it's rotating along the wrong axis, so I'm going to undo that by right-clicking to deactivate the rotation. I'm going to set the rotation to 3D cursor. Okay. So again, R on the keyboard for rotate. It's already duplicated, so we're good with that. And I think I'll position it. Maybe, I don't know, probably right about there. And let's go Shift. It's probably not far enough actually. So R. In fact, actually, I'm going to delete this. Sorry. X on the keyboard, delete faces. I'm going to do this again. So I'm going to select this object. Now, if I rotate around this, you can see here when I clicked on it, it just selected the top face. That I need to select the whole thing. And of course, I can try to manually go through and select each face. That would take a little bit of time. The shortcut key, however, there's like in 3ds Max, there's an element mode, which gives me the ability to select individual elements within an object. Blender has that too. It's the shortcut key is if you roll over the object and hit J. Oops, is it J? It's supposed to be J. Individual selection order. Oh, sorry, it's not J. It's L. Sorry, I forgot about that. So L on the keyboard selects whatever I'm rolled over. So if I roll over this and hit L, it will add it to the selection. So I'm going to deselect all, roll over it, and hit L. Now the other option is, if I have a polygon selected, I can hit Alt L, or no, Control L, I think. Control L selects all the object without me having to roll the mouse over it. So either roll the mouse over it and click L, or Control L will select whatever is connected to that one polygon. Okay, so now that I've got that reselected, I'm going to hit R on the keyboard for rotate, and I'm still rotating on. I didn't duplicate it, so I'm going to right-click to deactivate. Shift D, R. Now I'm going to hold down Control so that way I'm snapping it. I think it's like every 5 or 10 degrees on the rotation, so I can get a better, a kind of more of a lined rotation on each object. So I'm not just free going. And so maybe something like that. Now I'm going to repeat it. Shift D, R, hold down Control, let it snap. So maybe something about there. Shift D, R, hold down Control, something about there. Shift D, R, hold down Control, and something about there. Okay, so that looks about right. It's probably a little off, and I'm probably spend more time trying to adjust it. I'm actually going to rotate this back one. Something like that. That doesn't look right either. So maybe this needs to... So I'm going to deselect all. Just hit L on the keyboard while I'm rolled over this object. And click R on the keyboard. Hold down Control. Actually, I'm not even going to worry about Control now. I'm just going to line up my polygons to at least 2 edges. So I'm going to deselect all, L, R. That's pretty much good. Deselect all, L, R. Maybe something right about there. That's better. Deselect all, L, and R. So maybe there. Okay. Now it works. That should be fine. Again, these are just reference points. So it gives me the ability to come in. I'm going to deselect all. I'm going to grab these 2 polygons by holding down Shift and selecting them. Come back out to the top and hold down Shift and select these 2. Oh yeah, we haven't, we need to create the bridge here because this is an empty hollow. So I'm going to go to Edge Mode. I'm going to hit A to deselect all. I'm going to click on this edge, Alt click. Oh, nope, it's Control and Alt. Oh man, I'm having problems selecting. Why is this becoming a problem? Alt. Why are we fighting me? We go select, loop, there we go. And hold down Shift and Alt. There we go. Now it's working. Maybe my keyboard's going all wonky. So, all right, I have that selection. Just W on the keyboard and go down to Bridge Loops. Boom. Okay. So now I can come in and adjust. I'm going to go A to deselect all. I'm going to go back to Polygon mode. Select this polygon, hold down Shift, that polygon. Come back here at the top, hold down Shift, and go W on the keyboard for bridge. Voila. Now I can deselect all, roll over this object here, hit L and X, and delete faces. So I can repeat this process for each one of these points. So select, 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 and W, bridge. Deselect all, face. Sorry. So I'm just going to quickly repeat this. Let's see. It's going to be... Well, this one's a little off. All right, so it's going to be this one and this one, I believe. Maybe not. Oops. Bridge. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, there we have it. So now I'm going to go through and delete the extra pieces. Again, just rolling over, hitting L, and X on the keyboard to delete faces. Voila. So that is the next piece that's done. I think I'm all flipped upside down. So I'm going to hit Z on the keyboard. Oops, not Z. I'm going to hit 7 on the keyboard to go to my top view. There we go. And I'm going to go Tab to come out of edit mode. And there I have the sprocket. So that's how you would create. I can scale these out if I needed to modify the bridge a little bit. But that's how you create a sprocket that looks a lot like this. And you can choose more than just 2 faces. You can do 3 or 4 and 4 to make it thicker for the length of the arms here. But yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Let's go ahead and move it off to the side, grab, pull it over. Let's see, is there any other design in here that's weird for the sprockets? No, it's pretty much just repeating that same process, creating a new sprocket, giving it a radius, giving it an amount of teeth, and then shaping it how you want it to look. Now, remember, when I'm building my structure for my internal guts, I'm only going to be focusing on the area that I know the camera is going to see. So if you remember in the video, this section was all broken up, and there's a little bit up here that's broken up. So those are the 2 areas I'm going to cram all my designs into. My sprockets, my gears, whatever you want to call them, all these extra pieces that I'm going to create, because there's no necessity to create stuff that people's never going to see. However, if you plan on just having this crazy cool time animation where you're going to show all the guts, then you have a lot of work ahead of you. For positioning my sprocket, my gears, sorry, I should start calling them the Blender terminology, you can either manually position it and line it up like that, or, and I'll talk about this more later, but you can actually rotate also, and we don't want to rotate on the 3D cursor, so let's switch it back to individual origins or active element. We can do active element, that's fine. So if I hit rotate on the keyboard, I can actually rotate it in the correct position. Now keep in mind you're adding a rotation value here. You can see here that it added. I'm going to set this to 0 again. When we do stuff like that, we need to go through and reset these values. And again, it's something I'm going to talk more about later, but just to show you, Control A on the keyboard, this is what we call apply location rotation scale. This will apply any values that have been added here, so when we start coding or adding some script, we don't get some funny jumping around. So yes, that's how I would start positioning, and you can rotate the gears into the right positions. You don't have to worry about that. Now, let's say shapes like this, I would use the curve tool, and I'm going to show that here in a sec. There's a menu that I haven't really talked a lot about, and that's spacebar menu. If I hit spacebar, it gives me the ability to automatically search for something, and there's some things that are automatically posted in here, as you can see. Delete, keyframes, play animations, top sphere. There's some pretty cool options. And of course, I can say, let's say I want to look for align objects. Okay, so that gives me the ability to align 2 or more objects. Let's say like this gear has a gear right on top of it. So let's say I modeled out both. I can actually come in here, let's say it's these 2, select this guy, shift select this guy. I'm going to go spacebar menu, type in the align objects. It's going to give me the menu over here. All I have to do is click on whether it's going to be X, and I hold down shift and click on the rest. And you can see here it aligns them correctly, and then I can position them how I want with each other. So let me go back to my top view. Just to tell you that spacebar menu is very useful, allows you to pretty much find anything. The stuff that we were pulling up over here can be applied to the spacebar menu. Now, let's go ahead and create the shape. Let's go Shift A, curve, Bezier. I'm going to increase the radius so I can see it. And I'm going to go into edit mode right off the bat. Select, let's say, this point, move it all the way over here. Select this point and move it somewhere in here. I'm going to hit V on the keyboard and turn it into a vector to straight line. Let's position it something like that. Something like that. Now I'm going to hit E on the keyboard to grow my next vertex, or extrude is basically what it's doing. Why is this? Oh, yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting in this program we got to select V and do free. I just came out of a long day of working in cinema, and it's slightly different working with the spline, so forgive me if it takes a sec to reacclimate myself. to not being able to right click. It drives me insane, actually. Let's see here. That's good. And E again. Bring this up to, let's say, about there. Select these 2 points, F to fill them. And let's go ahead, select, let's go V for vector. There. So that way there no weird bubble effect. And of course, we can jump over to the 2D menu, creates a more or less a flat solid, give it some extrude. It's looking good, and maybe a little bit of depth to give it a little edge. And I'm good with that. So that piece is done, and that's how I do all these funny looking pieces in here. Pretty self-explanatory. What's next that I haven't really shown how to model? Okay, so there's a lot of little bolts and nuts in here and these weird round things. There's 2 ways to do that. We can hand model them, or you can actually use bolts. That's actually an option in Blender. We didn't activate it yet, so let's go ahead and come out of edit mode. So we're in object mode now. Again, tab on the keyboard. Let's go File, User Preferences, and let me just type in bolt. Right here, Bolt Factory, check. Okay, this allows us to create bolts, adds it to the mesh menu. Oops, let me pull that back up. Now the other thing I want to talk about since we're here is, let me just delete all this, is there is an actual dynamic spacebar menu, this right here. Let's turn that on too. And I'm going to save user settings, and now I can close it. Now the dynamic spacebar menu, if I activate it now, hit the spacebar on the keyboard, I can click the search bar, go into the search options, just like before. Pretty self-explanatory. Or I can actually go into these menus. So I can use spacebar instead of Alt-H, which is a little bit faster, or sorry, Shift-A, which is a little bit faster to find my objects. And you got transform options. So transform, you get your move, or yeah, move, grab, rotate, scale. And so if you don't really like shortcut keys, this is a good menu. I mean, it's still a shortcut key, but it's a simple, single shortcut key to activate. You get geometry to origin, so you can move your objects to the origin point. You have, I mean, just lots of options in here. Origin to 3D cursor, mirror menu, so on and so forth. So just keep that in mind, that now we have an advanced spacebar menu that's got some pretty cool stuff. That's the shortcut key for unhiding and hiding the tools over here, which is T and N. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So moving forward, let's look at the bolts. Shift A. I'm sorry, Shift A. And mesh. And bolt. Okay, so the bolt icon or windows over here. You can see it created this pretty cool bolt already. Rotate around it. I have full control over the head, how wide it is, this little extra neck piece, how wide that is, thread count. I mean, there's just so much here that you can play with. You can even play with changing it to a nut. And you can play with changing the bolt's head. So Phillips, we're not seeing anything because we have to add some depth. Actually, it's not depth I want to add, it's this right here. So you can see here that creates a Phillips head, or I can go Allen head, and or none. So let's see here, the bit type, or sorry, bit type, head type, you have cap, you have dome, pan, countersink. So you have lots of options here. Lots of options. And going to my top viewport, you can see here that several of those options can match some of these round bubble looking things, some of these very flat things. So that's one way to create screws if you're going to actually have the screw floating around visible to where all this extra detail is needed. If not, then it's not necessary to add so much extra geometry to your scene. So let's play with creating an object like this, so without the extra screw piece. So I'm going to X on the keyboard and delete that for now. Go to my top viewport, and so we got this round flathead type screw in here. So I'm going to hit Shift A because it's pretty much a cylinder, and go to cylinder, and cylinder radius can bring it down. I'm fine with 64 segments since this is going to be so small. Depth, that's fine, 0.4. I can probably bring it up a little bit, 0.5. Yeah, and go back to my top view. So I need to create this cut right here in the top of it. So I'm going to go into edit mode, rotate around, and you can see here there's no geometry in the top of this thing to make my life easy to make a cut and extrude it in. So we need to kind of do that ourselves. So top viewport, let's see here. I'm going to take a look at maybe this vertex going all the way across to here. So I'm going to deselect all, go to vertex mode, and select, let's say, this guy. And so that's 2 up. So 1, 2, and then 2 down. I'm not going to select the bottom set yet because I'm going to talk about how connection works. So a lot of people will just hit automatically F on the keyboard. This is a bad idea. Yes, it did connect the 2 vertices, but it did not split the face. And let me show you by going to polygon mode and trying to select the face. You can see here it selects it as one solid. Not good at all. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control Z till this goes away. All right, so the other option is now J. J on the keyboard will allow me to cut and or connect the 2 vertices and cut the face. So I'm going to hit J on the keyboard. Now if you take a look at the polygon mode, it actually split the polygons. Okay, so a lot of people coming into Blender have that big issue. They try hitting F, it doesn't work. They go to the forms. Well, that's an answer to all the forms out there. J on the keyboard. So let me go back to vertex mode and deselect all. Go back to my top viewport. And what we do, 2 up, so we'll go 2 down. 1, let's see, what was it from this point? Yeah, 1, 2. Okay, and J. There I have it. I have my Phillips section that I can extrude in. Now this is probably really wide. I probably should have stuck with this section here, and I can still do that. I can select these 2, hit J, select these 2, hit J, and then focus on this inner piece here. So I'm not stuck. I can even remove those lines if I have a problem with them. I'm fine with them staying. So next step is I want to add a depth point. So let me go to edge mode, select an edge, and Alt and Control select to loop. And we're going to subdivide. So W on the keyboard, subdivide. There we go. So now I have the depth point. I'm going to go into my face mode. So face, and select all these faces right here. And hit X on the keyboard. Delete the face. Now I'm going to start bridging. So let me go into my edge mode. Select these 2 edges. And hit W on the keyboard. Well, I should be able to grab all 4 and W it. W, bridge. And do the same thing up. W, bridge. W. I can actually use fill as well, just F on the keyboard. It's a shortcut key if I don't want to bridge it. So, there you have it. Now we have the Phillips head screw, and might as well clean up some of this geometry. So I'm going to select this face and hit X on the keyboard. Delete edge, select this edge, and actually I'm going to undo that. Instead of deleting, I'm going to X, I'm going to say dissolve edge, and that prevents the polygon from being deleted. Dissolve edge, boom. So now we got some clean geometry, and hit 7 on the keyboard to top view. So there you go. So there's nothing in here that you shouldn't be able to model now. Using splines to create these weird shapes, and using the bolts to maybe create these round looking heads, and you know how to create these screws now. So let me bring in another reference image just to see if there's something else I can go over before I pause this, build out my section, and we can continue on with this tutorial. So let's go to reference images, add image, open up image, and I'm going to go, reference, thumbnails. Might be some kind of interesting designs in here. There's nothing new that I'm seeing that we haven't done. Well, all right, let's bring this guy in. All right, I'm gonna hide my top one. I'm gonna increase this guy's size. All right, so there's these things, which again I would use splines to create, but they've got holes in them. Well, actually we did that with the hands and the clock. So yeah, there's nothing new that you guys don't know how to build now. So and duplication here, gears. This is a 4-teeth gear. That's going to be easy because you can use the axis, the green and red lines here to create the arms for those gears. You can come in like this here. Gear has a lot of pieces on it. So I can go, I'm in edit mode right now. Let me turn that off because I was on that bolt. Let me go to this guy. Let me grab him and move him over a little bit closer. So if I go into edit mode, let's see, sorry, tab on the keyboard. I'm going to select this face here, so go to face mode. And I can inset, I on the keyboard to inset, bring it down. Oops, I'm going to undo that. Select the face, I'm going to make sure my mouse is way out here. And let's say something like this, and then I can go E, extrude it up, then I to inset it, then E to extrude. So that's how I can create the extra little pieces that you're seeing in this top view here. Just continually moving it up and extruding and insetting. Now, there is something that I want to talk about, naming conventions, to make your life easier when we start building this out. So I'm going to hit tab on the keyboard to come out of edit mode. This is gear 3. I'm actually going to rename it, right click rename, to G, which stands for gear. And I'm going to give it whatever scale that I put this at. So this is what, 16? G16. And this one was G8. And that's exactly how I name all my objects. Now I can go G16_2. So if I have a secondary one that's a 16 radius, so let's say Shift D, move this over, and hit this right here. Let's go rename. And I can actually leave it at the 001 if I wanted to, but as long as I know that this is the radius of 16, this is a radius of 8. And so it's a good idea to start renaming your sprockets right offhand when you remember their scale. And that's going to save you time when we start linking these, and know that this is going to rotate twice as slow as this guy, because it's twice as big. So keep that in mind. Go ahead and continue on with this tutorial. I'm going to pause the tutorial here, because I'm going to come back and I'm going to have mine fully built out. All my gears lined up, and I'll talk about it, of course. So join me in a few seconds. Okay, we're back. Now, I used my original image to place my gears and my pieces around, so that basing where my geometry would be. And you can see here, I just moved and rotated the gears into position. The ones that I offset in the back, again, you select them, hit G and hit Z on the keyboard to push them back, or you can actually activate the move tool in position where you want them. Now I might be moving these back a little bit more to give them some more space between them. I don't know yet, but pretty much the same thing throughout the whole thing. Nothing in here that I haven't shown you how to do. This right here was just extruding, insetting, extruding, insetting. That's all it was. So nothing new that I haven't shown you in previous examples. Sorry, excuse me. And if I go ahead and hit unhide all, so Alt H, you can see here that's where we're at. I'm going to hit Z to go to wireframe mode, and you can see that I've come very close to my edging. So I'm going to be breaking this stuff up. I might not see a lot of this design, depends on how much I chop out into this clock face, but it's looking not too terrible. And of course people aren't going to see that it looks like I doubled up some of the parts, because I'm not going to be showing all the parts like that. So it should give me a good look without people knowing that I kind of cheated. Is there anything else in here? Nope, that's pretty much it. So yeah, we have our gears ready, and I think what I'm going to do is stop here, because the next step, I think we should start working with materials and unwrapping. So the next tutorial, that's exactly what we're going to do, is we're going to take our clock and play with the materials and unwrapping of the clock. So go ahead and join me for part, I think, 4.